All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is Tuesday. You know what that means. Time to do the Tao now, living the wisdom of the Tao and diving deeper into teachings on enlightenment and spirituality. Also coming to us from the wisdom of the ages. 60 days to enlightenment, supposedly, ladies and gentlemen. But as we found out on the series that we went through last year on this channel, going through the entire wisdom of the ages and all the wonderful authors and poets and mystics and philosophers, we found out that enlightenment is a lot longer process than 60 days. It may even be 60 lifetimes, ladies and gentlemen. But with that being said, we are going to be looking at Living the Wisdom of the Tao from Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life from Dr. Wayne W. Dyer. And we'll be looking at the second verse number 2 from the Tao Te Ching, entitled from Wayne Dyer, Living the Paradoxical Unity. And I think that will tie together well with what we'll be looking at here in the Wisdom of the Ages, which will be the secrets for manifesting. And I know manifesting and creation is one of those very popular topics when it comes to these kind of genres. And so I thought it'd be cool for us to see what we can find here today from the wisdom of Dr. Wayne W. Dyer and many more, including Lao-tzu, and possibly, we'll see, maybe even the Sufi poet Hafiz, who's always a favorite. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate each and every one of you that joined me, and let us jump into the second verse of the Tao Te Ching. It begins by saying, under heaven, all can see beauty as beauty, only because there is ugliness. All can know good as good only because there is evil. Being and non-being produce each other. The difficult is born in the easy. Loss is defined, or long, is defined by short. The high by the low. Before and after go along with each other. So the sage lives openly with apparent duality and paradoxical unity. The sage can act without effort and teach without words, nurturing things without possessing them. He works, but not for rewards. He competes, but not for results. When the work is done, it is forgotten. That is why it lasts forever. And so this is a very deep description of duality and seeing the unity in duality, which itself would seem to be a paradox. A paradox, I've never actually looked up the exact definition, but to me it is something that seems to be the opposite of the way that it should work, but it actually works that way. Much like the sage acting without effort, but still achieving results, and teaching, but without words, working, but not for rewards. And so it's these ideas that the two are dependent upon each other, which creates a oneness. Now let us dive into Living the Paradoxical Unity from Dr. Wayne W. Dyer and see what we can glean and learn from this fascinating second verse of the Tao Te Ching. The concept, Wayne begins, of something or someone being beautiful is grounded in a belief system that promotes duality and judgment. This way of thinking is prevalent and commonplace for just about everybody in our culture, perhaps even having some value in society. I encourage you to explore the concept of this quote-unquote paradoxical unity that is mentioned in this second verse of the Tao Te Ching. And by changing our thoughts, by changing our perspective and the way that we look at things, our lives, and truly will change, and we may begin, as Wayne says here, to live this bliss of the oneness that lies within all of the dark and the light, and the good and the bad, and this and that, and all the things that we separate into categories from our human perspective. And so, Wayne continues, has it ever occurred to you that beauty depends on something else being identified as a lack thereof, or quote unquote ugly? Therefore, the idea of beauty produces the idea of ugliness, and vice versa. Just think how many concepts in this duality belief system that our society is mostly structured around. And it makes sense, so we can exist here in the physical realm. Remember, these things like the ego that are necessary for survival are also a hindrance to, or maybe a challenge or an opportunity, because challenges are opportunities. Remember that. And so it may be an opportunity in our path for us to learn and grow. However, a person, Wayne continues, isn't tall unless there is a belief system that includes this idea of short. And our idea of life couldn't exist without that of the opposite. Day is the opposite of night, but they go together. Alan Watts put it as goes with one another. Goes with being one word. But male, the antithesis of female, and so on and so forth. So what if you insisted that instead we perceived all of these duality concepts that we live with as a piece or a glimpse of the actual perfection of the oneness, or of God, or of the universe, of nature, harmony? Often the Tao is related to a description of nature. And so if we can look at reality in our lives and everything with this bigger perspective, rather than being so finite from our dual perspective that we are not connected to everything and it is separate, but rather that we are connected to all of this and it is a giant system, in that if we could begin, as Wayne was saying there, that if we could perceive all of these separate things that we see them as actually a piece or a glimpse, quote unquote, of the perfection of the entire system, of the oneness, of the Tao, and of God. And so Wayne says, I think this is what Lao-tzu is suggesting with his description of the sage in the second verse in the beginning, who lives openly with apparent duality and paradoxical unity. Imagine the perfect oneness coexisting in the apparent duality that we have described, where opposites are simply judgments made by human minds. Remember, in the teachings of David Hawkins in the last few weeks, even though we skipped last week, but that's fine. In the last few weeks before that was about this idea that our silly human notions, and we want to use that to try to define God or the nature of reality, when really the structure and systems that are amazingly intricate and seem to have a perfect balance and function, these systems of reality are beyond the silly human notions of good and bad. So with that in mind, the human minds make up these simple judgments of things that we say are separate, and we put them into categories of opposites. And this is all done in the world of what Lao-tzu describes as the world of the 10,000 things, rather than the Tao. And so let me reference here the first verse of the Tao Te Ching. Yes, the first verse goes like this. This will explain the 10,000 things. And this will explain maybe what God or the Tao is. But those may be two separate things. Anyway, with that being said, the first verse of the Tao Te Ching. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The Tao, God, the universe, reality, all of this, is both named and nameless. As nameless, it is, I'll add here, quote unquote, the oneness. The verse says, quote, it is the origin of all things. So as nameless, unseparated, uncategorized, this or that, as nameless, it is the oneness and the origin of all things. As named, once we put a label on it, the verse says, quote, it is the mother of 10,000 things. Ever desireless, one can see the mystery. Ever desiring, one can see only the manifestations, or these things that we see as separate and not a part of the oneness. And the mystery itself, the verse finishes, is the doorway to all understanding. Understanding this mystery of the oneness, or of God, if you want to call it that, in all of our reality. From Hermetics, I've learned that the physical version, this is just Hermetic philosophy, the physical version being a mirror of the spiritual, non-physical version. But so as a sage lives openly, and in, the trees, the flowers, these things, it's like surely the daffodil, Wayne says, doesn't think that the daisy is better or worse, prettier or uglier than it is. And the eagle and the mouse have no sense of the opposites that we call each of these things. And so the trees, the flowers, and animals know not of ugliness or beauty. They simply are in harmony with the eternal Tao, devoid of judgment. Now, my mind almost stopped me there, and it was like, but eliminating beauty would be a sad thing, because that's one of the great parts of this existence, is being able to see. This comes from the Hermetic philosophy as well as the Tao philosophy, as well as many others, is being able to see that all of this that we exist in and that we are a part of is creation, and that we are a part of that, and then to appreciate that. And I always say to see the beauty in it, that it is this amazing. I keep looking over this direction because this is where my tomato plants and the pepper plants and the flowers here and the other plants we got going on, they're all like sitting right here. So when I'm thinking of these things, the systems of nature and reality, I look across to the grass and the trees and the plants and all of these things that are seemingly doing nothing, but are leaving nothing in their own process undone. Anyways, I got off on a ramble. It's been a while, ladies and gentlemen. That felt good. But so these things, the trees, the flowers, they know not ugliness. They just simply are. And so if we could appreciate and understand that things just are, there is no, this flower is worse than that one for any reason. We could make those judgments ourselves, being, physical, mortal, dual beings. But that would be a lack of noticing and realizing and recognizing and appreciating the true connection and unity in the duality, or the oneness that lies beneath our separation perspectives. And then, even though we could say, I like this one's more beautiful than the other one, they are both good. I just, so don't get rid of beauty in your mind. I thought that was an important thing to add there. What we're getting at here is appreciating and understanding that there is an underlying unity upon all these duality perspectives that we have. Now, Wayne continues. Practice being a living, breathing paradox. So opposites every moment of your life. The body has physical boundaries. It begins and ends and has material substance, yet it also contains something that defines boundaries and has no substance and is infinite and formless. This is how we can go in our minds to very distant places, sometimes places that aren't even here in the physical reality, but we have this ability with our minds. And this, apparently, according to the Hermetic philosophy, is one of the great gifts to us here as mortal dual beings, is that we have both the mind that is non-physical, but also the body that is physical, so that we can experience both aspects of reality simultaneously. This has gone into much deeper, and so I'll leave that there, but this infinite formless, and we are both the oneness, the Tao, and the 10,000 things, or form at the same time, simultaneously. And let the contrasting and opposite ideas be within you at the same time. This is something I always love to mention, especially when people get in debates like, the globe back there, is the earth flat or is it round? Is it this way or is it that way? Why can't we be open to both possibilities at the same time? Even if both sides present a heavy amount of evidence with a, charismatic argument. It's like, I think it is important to at least hold to, you are both, let the contrasting and the opposite ideas be within you at the same time. Compare and contrast. Because if you eliminate one or the other, then all you have to work with is one or the other. And I think actually a compare and contrast situation in most debates would lead to a greater understanding, especially if it's a personal pursuit. And so, doing some weird random rambling today, but I like it. And if you're getting value, consider subscribing, smash the like button. And I appreciate and love each and every one of you that spend time here with me. And so, here in a moment, we'll get to the secrets of manifesting from the wisdom of the ages. But we're talking about duality and unity and the oneness. And so finally, Wayne says here, accomplish much by trying less, which is paradoxical. You would think the more that you try, the more that you would accomplish. Have you ever tried to force something and it doesn't work, and then the moment you don't really care and you just try it easily, it automatically works, and you're like, that's so weird. I was trying very hard the last time that it didn't work, and this time it just worked automatically. Well, this is one of the secrets not only to manifesting, but in being in alignment and in harmony with God, the universe, the Tao, Atum, Great Spirit, Grand Organized Design, whatever you want to call it. Accomplish much by trying less. Effort is one piece of the whole. Another piece is non-effort. Fuse these opposites, these dichotomies together, and the result is effortless action without attachment to outcome. Now that there is a huge key to manifesting. And that sentence should be contemplated if you want to begin to create in your life on purpose. Then you need to remove the blockage of the quote unquote flow from coming into your life. And that begins with recognizing and understanding, first of all, the oneness that we described in the beginning, that none of these things are separate and they all come from the same source. And so we're not trying to manifest something that's separate from anything else, but we're trying to align ourselves with that which is already possible in reality. And the part of this alignment process or resonation process to our desired goal, but remember, desire could be the root of suffering. So be careful with too much desire. And that is what gets us to this most important principle here, is accomplishing more by trying less. So when we can fuse effort with non-effort, the result becomes effortless action Now, this take a lot of contemplation to get what this sentence means, really. But remember, constant contemplation is spiritual striving, pure philosophy, through constant contemplation to attain true knowledge of what Hermes said was the one God, Atum, but I think really kind of just the nature of reality itself and how that works. And so through this constant contemplation, we begin to understand how effortless action without attachment to outcome can lead to achieving great results when it seemed like you didn't even try and there was no results you were expecting. This is a paradox. And this is why I love paradoxes, because these things work. This is what I call, or Wayne also called, the science of lucky people. And we've talked about that before. And so, let us continue here. This is precisely how you dance with someone. He goes, Wayne continues, you make an attempt, you assume a position, you listen to the music, and you let go, all at the same time. Allowing yourself to easily move. Now, think about this metaphorically with, whatever it is that you're trying to do in your life with this process of manifesting or creation, or even if it's just adjusting your life slightly to an intention. And so, because like when we want money, actually a lot of the times we want is just a sense of security, or, that we are taken care of and we're not worried that we're not going to have enough. That's another key to manifesting, is you have to get rid of the scarcity, because the more that you think, I don't have enough, the universe is going to go bing like a mirror and send you back of more of what you're sending out. So another key secret to manifesting is what you think about expands. And then that's often what you get back in reciprocal action from the universe. Anyways, this is all just what I've learned in my studies over the last 10 or 12 years, and of the last 6 or 7 of trying to apply this, practically and actively in my life. And I'll say the results are, they're not what you expect, but they are there, and it is fascinating. So with that being said, back to the dancing. You allow yourself to just easily move. And the more you overthink it, the more rigid and stiff you become. I added that last line, but it would seem to be correct. Wayne continues, combine the so-called opposites into the oneness of being without judgment or fear. See, that could inhibit your activity as well. So we have to remove the judgment and fear as well, which goes into certainty, and having the certainty and the knowing that you will be able to do whatever it is that your intention is around. And so combining these opposites, getting rid of the judgment and fear, labeling action as a fine effort implies a belief that trying hard is better than not trying. But trying itself only exists because of beliefs about not trying. And so attempting to pick up a piece of trash is really just not picking up the trash. This is interesting. Once you've picked it up, then trying and not trying are irrelevant. See, that makes me think of Yoda there. There is no try. It's like, just do. Is that what it was? Trying and not trying are irrelevant once you've picked it up. Understand that you can act without the implied judgment of words such as, doing a good job or a greater effort, these kind of things, but you can literally just do. And this will lead to how we can have this effortless accomplishment without an attachment to results. What was it? I want to read it again because it was the most important line of all of this. It was like how you can Perfect oneness is what Lao-tzu. It begins and ends and has, I lost it there. I lost it there. He invites our wisdom to combine perceived opposites and live an unhurried life. The perfection of the Tao is allowing the apparent duality while seeing the unity that is the reality. Last seen for what they are. Very interesting, ladies and gentlemen. That is living the paradoxical unity of duality. And so understand that you can act without these implied words such as effort and trying. And so I imagine in today's language, Lao-tzu would sum it up, the second verse of the Tao Te Ching, in these two simple words. Just be. Just be. Because as a great teacher said, I don't know if it was Ram Dass but you are human beings, not human doings. So just be. Let us just be, ladies and gentlemen. Do the Tao now. This is why you should get this book for your shelf and yourself, to put it on your shelf, is because at the end of each of these short little teachings, succinct teachings on each verse of the Tao Te Ching, he gives us a little paragraph on how we can try to apply this mystical wisdom practically in our lives today. He says here, do the Tao now. Do the Tao today by noticing an opportunity to defend or explain yourself and choosing not to. Instead, turn within and sense the texture of misunderstanding, feeling it all the way through your physical system. Just be with what it is. Instead of opting to ease it by traversing the outer world path of explaining and defending yourself, don't get caught up in the apparent duality of being right or wrong. Congratulate yourself now for making a choice to be in oneness. While you can recognize that there is two things, but congratulate yourself for making a choice to be in paradoxical unity, a oneness where all of the spectrum simply is, and silently appreciate the opportunity, along with your willingness to practice your sageness. Fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. And that is why we always go back now, since we've done this whole series before. So if you missed every verse of the Tao Te Ching, we have that series and playlist on this channel, starting from the beginning, going all the way to the 81st verse. And so check that out if you'd like. But now let's continue our little discussion on the secrets of manifesting, because I find a lot of people find that fascinating, and I think it's a whole lot more of a process than any of us understand. Whole lot more. It's like we started this video with 60 days to enlightenment, 60 days to manifesting. I think it's more like 60 lifetimes, if not more, 60,000. But this little section is entitled Privacy by Dr. Wayne Dyer. But it begins by him saying both the secret for manifesting what you desire into your life and the mysteries of quantum physics are partially revealed in these words of Mohandas Gandhi, also known as Mahatma, which means great soul. Gandhi advocated for non-violence in his fight for independence and civil rights for the people of India. Now, people have different opinions about people, and that's just fine. We're talking about spiritual philosophy here. And so with that being said, the words of Mohandas Gandhi, 1869 to 1948, what Wayne Dyer is referencing here is he said, quote, "Strength of numbers is the delight of the mind. The valiant in spirit, glory in fighting alone." Now you may ask, what in the world does this have to do with manifesting? Well, let's see what Dr. Wayne W. Dyer has to teach us on this subject. This is clearer when we consider that we can divide the universe of our personal experience into the seen and the unseen. So this goes perfectly what we were reading from Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living in the Wisdom of the Tao about duality and this oneness that underlies the separateness of the physical. And so this is clearer. Remember, thinking about quantum physics as well. So this isn't just spiritual mumbo, jargon. This is science as well. And so we can divide the universe of our personal experience into the seen and the unseen, or the material and the spiritual realms. The world of the seen is what we experience with our senses. So this is the physical, material. It is the world that we are most interested in when it comes to having the things that we desire. However, I'm sure if you're here wondering about manifesting, then you can already see where the problem with that approach is. It seems that this physical world, not the spiritual, not the mental, but the tangible and the material, is where we are most interested in when it comes to having the things that we desire. But the things, where do things come from? Now, this is an ultimate lesson in manifesting. I'm glad we went this direction. I just kind of chose some random ones and hoped they would come together. I mean, I glanced at them a little bit. I was like, okay, maybe this will work with that one. But ask yourself this question. When it comes to creation, which is what I mean by manifesting, some people hear the word manifesting and they're like, what is this? Literally just creating on purpose through your thoughts and your actions what kind of things you want to show up for yourself in your life. And so a lot of people would say that's crazy. But I used to think that as well. And then I've seen that it's actually not as crazy as it sounds. And it's actually the opposite. It's crazy to not do this for yourself. However, where do things come from? Wayne continues, how does this so-called reality appear before us the way that it is? How does it manifest? Quantum physics and quantum physicists search for the answer to that question, and I contend that the first quantum physicist was not Bohr or Einstein, but St. Paul. Very interesting. One of the authors of the New Testament. I believe St. Paul was the first Antichrist would be the wrong way to put it, because that means adversary to the teachings of the quote-unquote Christ. But so I think he was the first adversary to the teachings of the Jesus character or the Christ character, whatever you want to call that sage guru dude that had a lot of great spiritual wisdom, including about manifesting and enlightenment and, all of that you are divine, that you are a part of God, that you have the spark of divinity within. And so, but that's just my side opinion from things I've, looked into and listened to and researched in the past. And it's something that you could also look into, because if you put, this is just a side note, manifesting, we'll be back to that in 1 second. But if you put the books of the Bible in chronological order of when they were produced, then it looks like a very different story. And it actually seems to be an argument going back and forth between Paul and the apostles. Wouldn't you say? You'd be like, well, Paul was one of the apostles. Was he? Anyways, with that being said, because there's a lot that could go into that rabbit hole, I just wanted to, throw that out there. Back to manifesting in quantum physics and asking the question, where do things really come from? And the answer is they come from an idea. But let's explain that further. Wayne contends that the first quantum physicist was actually St. Paul. one of the authors of the New Testament, the words of St. Paul, quote, "That which is seen hath not come from that which doth appear." So that which we can see has not come from that which does appear. This is deep, Wayne. What does he mean? It seems to me that Paul stated precisely what contemporary quantum physicists have concluded is this, that particles themselves are not responsible for their own creation. And so then that brings the great, metaphysical or mystical or spiritual question. Where do they come from? Do things just come from nothing? If we're all made up of particles, how did we get here? This is where it ties into the secrets of manifesting, ladies and gentlemen, and the power of mind, which is talked a lot about in Hermetics, and we've been doing that on Wednesdays lately, except for last week. Last week, decided to take a week off, produce some short videos, and kind of, had some things going on. Currently have some family medical opportunities, and so send your thoughts of healing, health, comfort, peace, revitalization, vitality, and all of those great things to my dad, and I send that out. And back to this quantum physics. See, this particles themselves are not responsible for their own creation, and if everything we are here in this physical realm, whether you look at it from a spiritual philosophical perspective or from the viewpoint of quantum physics, is that we come from somewhere. All of this comes from somewhere that is a non-physical. So this goes back to this duality, that our personal experience can be divided into the seen and the unseen, the material and the spiritual. And so quantum mechanics involves studying matter, the material world, the particles. And at the tiniest level, while looking for the source of our material world, physical world, the conclusion is that the world of the seen comes from the world of the unseen. So you may be asking yourself now, if you are, then that's all right, but hopefully you're already picking up kind of what's being put down here. But how does this all relate to, what Wayne's saying and Gandhi's viewpoint on the valiant in spirit fighting alone? Well, the two divisions of our reality are ego and spirit. Ego is often described as standing for earth only because one cannot create or manifest from the dimension of ego. And the unseen world is called spirit. Particles, the material itself, are not responsible for their own creation. We know that already, as we just learned. And so to manifest, to create your dreams, you must be free of your ego. And we've talked about this recently in past videos, so be sure to check those out. Ego is nothing more than an idea we carry around that insists, this is what I was talking about earlier, that insists that we are separate. I am this and this is that. And this is my persona. And I am this ego persona that is created from, the earliest stages of childhood, when we have to begin to, acclimate ourselves to this physical reality of duality. And so we continue, if I could find my spot again, as long as you believe yourself. So ego is nothing more than an idea that we carry around that insists that we are separate and in competition, remember the survival programming, with others, and also separate from God or our source, this place where the particles come from. And that seems to organize them miraculously in a grand organized design. God. But so when we, as long as our belief is this way of ourselves, we believe ourselves to be separate from everyone and everything, from our source, then we lose the power of our source. So when we can reconnect to our source or make conscious contact, is what Wayne describes it as, with this unseen quote unquote spirit. I mean, a lot of these things can have a lot of different names, so don't get too hung up on the names here. It's just the overarching concepts or archetypes or principles that we're getting at. But so when you reconnect to our source or make conscious contact with this unseen spirit, you regain the power of our source. To me, this just simply means that you regain the ability to use your mind from the creative aspect of seeing the world as an open palette of creative opportunity that comes from this spiritual or non-physical realm of waves into the physical world that we see as particles. From waves to particles. I probably got there before Wayne does, but this is the teaching of how this relates to quantum physics. And so let me continue. This means that we regain the power to manifest, to create, to heal, to attract what you desire into your life. But remember, if you are saying, okay, I desire money, it doesn't work the same way as I desire financial security, a comfort about my finances, and these different things that rather than focusing on the material thing that we want to focus on the feelings that we want to have from those things. And so when you the power, this means we regain this power to heal, to attract what we want. However, even reconnected to source, ego still can be a blocker to the flow of this ability into your life. Ego still wants to be involved because it's like, hey, you can't get rid of me. If you do, then we're not going to survive. You're going to just turn into like the stone Buddhas you see that are just rocks, statues sitting there, a blissed out oneness. And so the moment you begin to tell others, this is when it comes to the silence and the personal nature of this manifesting process, is the moment that you begin to tell others about what you desire and how you are going to create the kind of life that is your personal destiny. And once you're saying, yes, I'm going to manifest this and that, you bring in ego because you are attaching to the opinion of the judgment or the duality of someone else's. Even if you're not worried about their judgment, you're still like, you're changing the channel of energy from the focus of the desire to the connecting of you telling that to somebody else. And so let me continue, because I'm not saying that large groups of people with the same intention is not powerful. That's actually more powerful than a single individual with an intention. But when you're doing this in a personal nature, it will change the energy from your direction to how your ego thinks the other person is going to feel about. And so it brings in the ego. And so as you begin explaining your radical ideas, you'll be asked to defend yourself, maybe, even if not, though. But then you will feel the need to explain and argue about how this fits or fails to fit into the perceptions of those that you're talking to. So in most debilitating of all, you will be expected to listen to the logic of those you choose to share your dreams with as they tell you to quote unquote get real. So this is all just some crazy, mystical talk from dudes on the internet. And if you want to feel that way, then that's just fine. Although I will say, without great constant contemplation and spiritual striving through pure philosophy to attain the understanding and the wisdom of the ages, so that we can increase our awareness, and then hopefully the quality of our lives through this increased awareness. Once the ego becomes involved, Wayne continues, you literally lose the ability to create what your heart tells you is your destiny. Thus, by sharing your innermost desire, you seek out the strength of numbers, which Gandhi says is the delight of the mind. It makes the ego feel good when everyone's like, yeah, everybody's going to support you. But this is a personal process. I mean, increasing the consciousness of humanity and the planet is not so much a personal process, but as we've discovered, that can be done through this personal process. And so the more we want to take to the strength of numbers, it's going in the opposite direction for our own personal goals, desires, and intentions for what it is we want to create in our own personal lives. And I think going through that process personally will allow us to begin to interact and help more broad rather than just our own lives. But make no mistake about it, Wayne says, the timid do not manifest their own dreams. They join the ranks of the unfulfilled. So do not be timid in this process. By fighting alone for what you know or what you have as your intention or what you know to be your destiny, regardless of what others say, you become the quote-unquote valiant in spirit who glory in fighting alone. Spirit is the source of all that you see, all that you witness, and all that you observe. And you can reconnect by avoiding the ego's influence. This means specifically keeping your dreams to yourself and sharing them. It says with God, I'd say with the Tao, that which you are a part of, or whatever you call that invisible source of everything, and reconnect to that source and regain all the powers of that source that brings everything from the world of the waves, the formless, into the world of the particles and everything we see, and regain all the powers of that source. We could finish it there. That was fantastic, powerful, ladies and gentlemen. But what Wayne Dyer is great for is he always gives a little story, and this is why I love to listen to him. He says here, quote, as a young man, I had a vision of creating financial independence because I shared my plan with my family and friends, and each time I related how I was going to first pay myself 1/5 of everything I earned before anything was spent elsewhere, I heard all sorts of objections to my financial strategy. Remember, he goes, I remember being told, you're out of touch with reality, Wayne. And you can't save 20% of your income, pay taxes, pay your bills, and take care of your family. It's impossible. And he goes, I defended my plan, explaining how compounding the interest and not touching the principal would lead to living off the tax-free interest in less than 15 years, which is, there's a little powerful bit of advice there. You'd have to figure out the certain systems and investments or whatever to put things in. But he goes, the point here is I defended my plan, explaining and how this would lead to his expected goal. Remember, attached to outcomes now, not this effortless action that leads to achieving results that were not expected. But I would become discouraged listening, Wayne says, to the quote-unquote experts who are majoring in poverty. So once again, it's like taking advice from people that are not successful in the area that, it's all like you tell people, I'm going to do this. And then they all tell you that's a bad idea, but none of the, you know, it's like, well, why does your advice count? You haven't tried it. But Wayne says, long story short, I learned to keep my mouth shut and proceed silently. I found that the less I needed to tell others of my vision, the faster my vision began materializing. He says, by removing my dream from the ego state and instead relying on the silent power, I attracted into my life a financial independence that reflected my inner vision. And see, he didn't attract to his life a pile of money. It was financial independence that reflected his intention, his inner vision. And so when you're about to seek the endorsement of anyone for your dreams, stop and remember that once the ego becomes involved, you lose both your spiritual and scientific means for creating what you want. To satisfy your need to announce your plans, describe in a journal what you are going to manifest in your life. And at the very least, your journal will not give you reasons to doubt your dreams. And then finally, ladies and gentlemen, on secrets to manifesting and understanding oneness and duality. Keep uppermost in mind that the process of creation moves from the unseen realm to the seen, and from the spirit to the material. And trust deeply in your ability to make conscious contact with that invisible world, because we're a lot closer than we think. And conscious contact is the difference between knowing about God and actually, as Wayne describes it, knowing God. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a boon to the wisdom of the ages and the wisdom of Dr. David, no, that was last time, Dr. Wayne W. Dyer, and Lao-tzu of the Tao Te Ching, and that time Mahatma Gandhi from the wisdom of the ages. Wow, ladies and gentlemen, that was profound. That was powerful. That, I think, could be a life-changing breakdown for somebody of oneness and duality and the secrets and the keys to manifesting. I think I'll leave it there for today. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate each and every one of you that spends time here with me on the channel and in the live premieres. It's always fun to see you in the chat and go back and forth with you. A shout out to A1 and Gorilla Press, my greatest supporters. You guys have been with me for the longest and show up the most often. If you don't make it, though, that's fine. Like, I didn't make it last week, and I'm not judging myself about it. And I think that's, where we kind of need to try to get to where we're human beings rather than humans doing all kinds of stuff and then judging ourselves and whatnot for it. So we'll leave it there, ladies and gentlemen. I love and appreciate each and every one of you. Remember, seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment, through a greater awareness and understanding of the nature of reality, so that we can increase the quality of our experience and hopefully the quality of the lives of those around us as well. And also remember that there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. It is what we must bring to life. Same thing with enlightenment. It is the way. And so when we can bring it to life, all the things we've been telling ourselves, oh, I'll be happy when I get there and have that, becomes irrelevant, because then we already are there. And hopefully the entire journey is wonderful. All right, we'll leave it there. I love and appreciate each and every one of you. Be sure to expand the description below. Check out my Etsy shop, as well as a link to the books to get the books for yourself, to put it on your shelf so you can join along in the future videos that we'll be doing for hopefully ever on this channel. This is just the beginning. Only a few years into this journey, and it's going to be a great one, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, be the change that you want to see. Be the example you want to set.